I'm Paul with Bliss Plumbing. Our specialty is water heaters and hot water heat boiler systems. Okay, the reason this water heater needs replaced is that it's leaking. And once the tank leaks, there's no fixing it. There's no patching the tank or welding it back together. These tanks now, between this jacket and the actual tank, have a foam insulation. And so sometimes the leak can be in the side, but it makes its way out one of these holes on the top, or sometimes these holes in the metal jacket. And so when your water heater does leak, the first thing to do is shut the valve off. And so this is a ball valve, and ball valves are quarter turn. So when the handle is perpendicular to the pipe, it's 100% off. And so when the handle is in line with the pipe, the valve is open. So the first step is shut the water off. The second step is shut the gas off. And it's also a quarter turn. The same thing, when the handle is perpendicular, it's shut off. Then the next step is to connect a hose to the drain, which is at the bottom, and run the hose to the floor drain. And then open the drain. And the other thing that needs to be done, you have to break the vacuum. So the water has to be replaced with air. So we have to open that up. So right now we'll just open the temperature and pressure relief. Hear how that's sucking the air. Otherwise the tank won't drain. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to disconnect the water connections and disconnect the gas connection. Another way to get air into the tank is by disconnecting this connection or the hot side connection. So as you can hear, it's sucking air from the runoff tube. As soon as we get this loose, shut that off. You can hear it sucking air from the cold. But this water heater has a shut off on the hot side. And so what happens sometimes is that where the valve meets, that makes a cross connection between the hot and cold. So sometimes if you turn a faucet on, the cold water backfeeds through the faucet, back through the piping and into the tank. So sometimes people will say, I've drained the tank, but why is there water? Well, when they've used the faucet upstairs or somewhere else, that water backfeeds through. So like I said, this one has a shut-off valve on the hot side, which is not code or not normal, just an extra tidbit there. This has an old flex on it, so we just break that. That's a flare fitting right there. And I always recommend replacing the gas flex. Kind of just a good safety feature. It's for as little as they cost, it's not worth the risk. The water connection's disconnected, the gas disconnected. The last piece is to get the flue disconnected. And also we can take off because this is a copper runoff tube, we can reuse it on the new water heater. I want you to note, up here on the cold side, there's no thermal expansion tank or thermal expansion valve. So what happens when water is cold, it takes up less volume than when it's hot. So what we want to do is add some type of alleviation, whether we use a tank or they make a special valve, that if once the tank gets hot and there's 50 gallons of cold water and we heat it up, it needs more volume. Because there's not any extra volume, it creates extra pressure. Sometimes it can cause the TNP, the temperature and pressure relief valve, to weep if there's too much pressure. So we're gonna install a valve that allows any excess thermal expansion to be safely drained off. And so, yeah, this thing's gonna be heavy. There's a lot of wetness in that insulation. So I just tip it up to get the last little bit drained out of the bottom. So one thing to consider, being proactive about changing your water heater. So see, this has made a mess, and we're being as cautious as we can with the sheets down and then the drop cloths down. But you know, the average life of a water heater is about 10 years. And so it may be prudent to change it at the 10-year mark or the 12-year mark, because as you can see, getting this out, there's definitely water that's not, we do the best we can to keep it clean, but it's dirty, rusty water. So something to consider is maybe being proactive and change it before it is a leaky, rusty tank. If we change it when it's still intact, it's a lot cleaner. So these are SharkBite flex connectors. We never reuse the flex connectors, whether it's a SharkBite or whatever brand. See, there's a rubber ring in there. So the rubber gets attacked by chlorine that they add to the water. And so, I don't know if your camera can see, that thing is pretty, it's got a pretty good imprint. And it might be stuck to that, so that's another reason we don't want to reuse them. This is what a new seal looks like compared to the other seal. We're going to solder this valve, and it needs to be, the arrow needs to go towards the tank. So first thing first about soldering is cleanliness is paramount. It has to be clean. So we physically clean it with a brush. And then the piece of pipe, we physically clean the pipe with sandcloth. Even though this is brand new pipe, you can see how it's tarnished there versus where I've sanded it. And see here how it's still a little dirty? Clean. There's no such thing as too clean when soldering. So even though it's brand new pipe, brand new fitting, we still want to clean them. And flux those two things. It's a cold day today, so we want to stir it up a little bit. But flux those two things. It chemically cleans the pipe, and it makes the solder flow around the fitting, around the joint. You just need a little thin layer. That's a mistake people make. They put too much flux on, then the solder runs everywhere, makes it look sloppy. Okay. And so I have some lead-free solder. When you're soldering, you heat the fitting, not the pipe. And what you want to do is you want to use the heat to draw the solder into the joint. And so what's missing here, there's no drip leg on this particular piece. So what we do is we follow this gas line back. And if you can see it, it's kind of tucked in. See that? So there is a drip leg on the main leg, or the main gas line, so we're not concerned about this little section here because it's above that. The drip leg is to catch any condensation or moisture that could be in the gas line. And the drip leg, this T fitting, that gives room for any condensation if there is any. Purged all the air, very important. And I've turned the gas on. So I will show you how to light the pilot. So this Bradford uses a Honeywell gas valve. And so you can see at the 12 o'clock position it has pilot. So make sure the gas valve is on. You turn the knob to the pilot, you hold it. Then this little button is a piezo, kind of like your barbecue. And so there's a little window down there. If we get all contorted and lay on our head, you can look in there and see the pilot. So until you verify that the flame has lit, you want to strike the piezo every few seconds. And now you can see the status light is blinking. And this little light is flashing. Then we can turn the knob to, I usually like to set it between hot and A. And if it's not hot enough, we can turn it clockwise to get more heat. If it's too hot, we can go counterclockwise for less heat. And so now what I always do when the burner first lights, I come here and I feel that there's drawing, and it feels like to me it's drawing. Then we can take this piece of tissue paper, see how it's wanting to suck it in there. And so then we feel the first fitting, feel as the draft hook getting warm. Yeah, it's starting to get warm there. I'm Paul with Bliss Plumbing Service. Give me a call and I can fix it. My number is 303-709-2482.